Jake Morrison wiped the sweat from his forehead as he checked the radio telescope controls one more time. The Clearwater Observatory was quiet at 3 in the morning. All the other scientists had gone home hours ago, leaving Jake alone with the massive dish that pointed toward the stars. He was not supposed to be here doing this. The observatory belonged to the government, and Jake was just a junior researcher. But for 6 months now, he had been sneaking back at night to use the powerful telescope for his own secret project. He was trying to talk to aliens. Jake had always believed that humans were not alone in the universe. Somewhere out there, other intelligent beings looked up at their own night sky and wondered if anyone was listening. Tonight, like every other night for the past half year, Jake was sending a message to what he thought was a planet called Kepler 442b. It was far away, over 1,000 light-years from Earth, but his calculations showed it might have life. Message was simple. Jake sent basic math problems, pictures made of radio signals showing the human body, and information about Earth. He hoped that if aliens received it, they would understand that humans were smart and peaceful. He dreamed of the day when they might send a message back. Jake typed commands into the computer and watched as the huge dish turned slowly toward his target coordinates. The motors hummed quietly in the desert night. He had done this so many times that his fingers moved automatically across the keyboard. Send the signal. Wait for any response. Then go home and pretend he had never been there. But Jake did not know about the problem with the telescope. 3 months ago, a small piece of equipment had been damaged during a storm. The repair crew had fixed it quickly, but they made a tiny mistake when they put it back together. The mistake was so small that the day shift scientists never noticed it. Their targets were close enough that the error did not matter. Jake's target was different. He was aiming at a star system so far away that even a tiny mistake became a huge problem. Instead of sending his signals toward Kepler 442b, the broken equipment was pointing the telescope at a completely different place. His messages were going to a star system only 37 light-years away. A star system that was not empty. As Jake finished uploading his nightly message, he leaned back in his chair and rubbed his tired eyes. He worked all day at the observatory, doing boring research about gas clouds and dead stars. Then he came back at night to chase his dream of finding aliens. His girlfriend had left him 2 months ago because he was always tired and distracted. His supervisor was starting to ask questions about why Jake looked so exhausted every morning, but Jake could not stop. Every night, he imagined his signal traveling through space, carrying the hopes and dreams of humanity to distant worlds. He pictured alien scientists receiving his message and realizing that Earth was full of intelligent life that wanted to be friends. The transmission finished, and Jake started his usual routine of checking for any incoming signals. He did not expect to find anything. Radio waves took over 1,000 years to travel to his target, and another 1,000 years to come back. Even if aliens existed and wanted to talk, Jake would be dead for centuries before their reply arrived. He adjusted the receivers and listened to the static from deep space. Most nights, he heard nothing but the random noise of the universe. Sometimes, he picked up signals from old satellites or radio stations from other countries. Tonight felt different, though. There was a pattern in the static that made his skin crawl. Jake turned up the volume and leaned closer to the speakers. The sound was very faint, buried under layers of cosmic background noise, but it was definitely there. It sounded like music, but unlike any music he had ever heard. The rhythm was wrong, too complex for human ears. The melody seemed to change in ways that hurt his brain to follow. His hands shook as he started recording the signal. This could not be real. Signals from space did not just appear out of nowhere. There had to be a logical explanation. Maybe it was interference from a military satellite or a secret government project. But as Jake ran the signal through his analysis software, his excitement turned to fear. The source was not from Earth. The signal was coming from the same direction where he had been sending his messages, but it was much closer than Kepler 442b. According to his instruments, the source was only 37 light-years away. The computer finished analyzing the strange music. Jake stared at the results with his mouth hanging open. The signal contained mathematical patterns that were impossible. The music was not random. Hidden inside the alien sounds were equations that described things humans had not discovered yet. Physics that was decades ahead of Earth science. Then the signal changed. The weird music faded away, replaced by something that made Jake's blood turn cold. Numbers, coordinates. The aliens were sending him the exact location of Earth, down to the precise position of the Clearwater Observatory. Jake's chair fell over as he jumped to his feet. How did they know where he was? His messages contained information about Earth, but not specific coordinates. Even if aliens could figure out which star system the signals came from, they should not be able to pinpoint his exact location. Computer screen flickered, and for a moment, Jake thought he saw something that looked like writing in the static. Not human writing, but symbols that seemed to move and change when he looked directly at them. Then the screen went completely black. All around the observatory, lights began to flash on and off in patterns that seemed almost like code. The temperature in the control room dropped so fast that Jake could see his breath. Emergency alarms started going off, but they sounded wrong, like the speakers were damaged. Jake ran to the window and looked out at the desert. In the distance, something was falling from the sky. At first, he thought it was a meteor, but meteors did not change direction in mid-flight. The object was glowing with a pale blue light, and it was definitely under intelligent control. As the thing got closer, Jake could see that it was not a natural object. It looked like it was made of metal and crystal, but the surface seemed to flow like liquid. The craft was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. It moved without making any sound, gliding through the air like it weighed nothing at all. The alien ship landed about half a mile from the observatory, behind a small hill that blocked Jake's view. The moment it touched the ground, every piece of electronic equipment in the building shut down. The lights went out, the computers died, and even Jake's digital watch stopped working. Jake stood in the darkness, listening to his heart pound in his chest. He had spent years dreaming of making contact with aliens, but now that it was happening, he was more scared than excited. He had no idea what kind of beings were in that ship, or what they wanted with him. Outside, a strange light began to glow beyond the hill where the ship had landed. The light was the same pale blue color as the ship, and it was getting brighter. Jake realized that whatever was out there was coming toward the observatory. He thought about running to his car and driving away as fast as possible, but his car was electronic, and it probably would not start. Besides, if the aliens could track him to this exact spot, running would not help. They would find him wherever he went. Jake took a deep breath and made a decision that would change his life forever. Instead of running away from the aliens, he would wait for them to come to him. After all, he was the one who had called them, here with his messages. The least he could do was be brave enough to meet them face to face. As he stood in the dark observatory, waiting for first contact with an alien species, Jake had no idea that his simple mistake with the telescope had just put all of humanity in terrible danger. Jake waited in the dark control room for 20 minutes before he realized the aliens were not coming to the observatory. The strange blue light had disappeared from behind the hill, and everything was quiet again. The electronic equipment was still dead, but Jake could hear normal desert sounds outside. Crickets, wind, and the distant howl of a coyote. Maybe the aliens had left. Maybe they had decided humans were not worth meeting after all. Jake felt disappointed and relieved at the same time. He had wanted to make contact with alien life his whole career, but now that it had almost happened, he was scared of what it might mean. He decided to walk home. His house was only 2 miles from the observatory, and the desert road was easy to follow even in the dark. Jake grabbed a flashlight from the emergency kit and headed for the door. The flashlight did not work, just like everything else electronic, but the moon was bright enough to see by. The walk home gave Jake time to think about what had happened. He had definitely received a signal from an alien intelligence. The mathematical patterns were too complex to be anything else. But why had they sent him Earth's coordinates? Were they planning to visit, or was it some kind of threat? By the time Jake reached his small house on the edge of Cedar Falls, he had convinced himself that the whole thing might have been a dream. He was exhausted from staying up all night, and stress could make people imagine things. Maybe his equipment had malfunctioned and created fake signals that only looked alien. Jake lived alone in a simple 2-bedroom house that he had inherited from his grandmother. The place was old but comfortable, filled with books about space and astronomy. He had turned the spare bedroom into an office where he kept his personal research and a small radio, set up for listening to signals from space. He unlocked his front door and stepped inside, reaching automatically for the light switch. Nothing happened when he flipped it. The power was still out, probably because of whatever the alien ship had done to the electronics at the observatory. Jake felt his way through the dark house to his bedroom, planning to get a few hours of sleep before work. That was when he saw her. A woman was sitting in the chair by his bedroom window, perfectly still and silent. In the moonlight streaming through the glass, Jake could see that she was beautiful but strange. Her skin was very pale, almost white, and seemed to glow faintly in the darkness. Her hair was long and silver, and her eyes reflected light like a cat's eyes. Jake froze in his doorway, his heart hammering against his ribs. The woman was wearing clothes that looked like they were made of metal and fabric woven together. The materials seemed to shift and change color as she moved, going from deep blue to purple to black. "Hello, Jake Morrison," the woman said. Her voice was soft and musical, but there was something wrong with the way she spoke. She knew English perfectly, but her accent was unlike anything Jake had ever heard. It sounded ancient and otherworldly. "Who are you?" Jake whispered. "How did you get in my house?" The woman stood up slowly and gracefully. She was tall, at least 6 feet, and moved like she was floating instead of walking. "I am Zara Vexthani of the Kyrathi people. I came because you called to us." Jake's mind raced. This had to be one of the aliens from the ship, but she looked almost human, except for her strange coloring and the way light seemed to bend around her. "I was trying to contact a planet over 1,000 light years away. How did you receive my signals?" Zara tilted her head, studying Jake with curious eyes. "Your messages did not go where you intended. They came to our world, and they woke me from a very long sleep. I have traveled far to meet the being who sent such interesting transmissions. Your world? Where are you from?" "A planet that orbits the star you call Wolf 359. We have been there for many thousands of your years, but most of my people sleep in deep hibernation. I was one of the few still awake when your signals arrived." Jake knew about Wolf 359. It was a red dwarf star only 37 light years from Earth. If aliens lived there, they were practically neighbors in cosmic terms. "But how did you get here so fast? Even traveling at the speed of light, it should take decades to cross that distance." Zara moved closer to Jake, and he noticed that the air around her felt cold. "We do not travel through space the way you understand. We use the energy patterns that connect all things in the universe. Your people will learn these methods someday, but not for many generations. Why did you come here?" What do you want? For the first time, Zara's expression changed. She looked sad and tired. I came because your transmissions were different from anything we have encountered in our long existence. Most species that achieve radio communication send messages of war, conquest, or fear. Your signals spoke of curiosity, hope, and a desire for friendship. I wanted to meet beings who could create such beautiful thoughts. Jake felt a mixture of pride and terror. He had always hoped that his messages would show aliens the best of humanity, but he had never expected them to actually work. Are you here alone? Yes, I am what you might call a scout. I investigate new species and determine if they are worth knowing. If I decide your people are worthy, I will send word to others of my kind. Something in Zara's tone made Jake nervous. What happens if you decide we're not worthy? Zara was quiet for a long moment. That has not happened often. Most species we encounter are either too primitive to matter or too aggressive to be allowed to spread to other worlds. The threat was clear, even though Zara had not said it directly. Jake was essentially being tested, and the future of humanity might depend on how well he represented his species. What kind of test is this? How do I prove that humans are worth knowing? There is no formal test, Jake Morrison. I will observe your people and learn about your nature. If you prove to be as curious and peaceful as your transmission suggested, my people will consider making contact with your governments. If not, Zara left the sentence unfinished. Jake noticed that Zara seemed to be getting weaker as they talked. Her glow was fading, and she was moving more slowly. Are you all right? You look sick. I am having difficulty in your environment. My people feed on energy patterns that are common in space, but rare on planetary surfaces. The magnetic field around your world interferes with my ability to sustain myself. What kind of energy do you need? Zara hesitated, as if she was embarrassed to explain. We consume electromagnetic radiation, electrical fields, and certain types of bioelectric energy. In our natural environment, we absorb power from stars and cosmic rays. Here, I must find other sources. Jake suddenly understood why all the electronics at the observatory had failed. You've been feeding on electrical equipment? I tried to. Be careful, but I was very weak when I arrived. I had to absorb energy from your devices to survive the landing. As if to prove her point, the lights in Jake's house suddenly flickered on for a few seconds, then died again. Zara's glow brightened slightly, and she stood up straighter. I'm sorry, she said. I cannot control it completely when I am this hungry. Your electrical grid is strange to me, much more complex than the simple power sources on most worlds. Jake realized he was in an impossible situation. He was hosting an alien who literally fed on electricity, which explained the power outages. If Zara kept draining energy to survive, people would notice. The government would investigate, and they would find her. But Jake also realized this was the most important moment in human history. First contact with an alien species was happening in his bedroom, and he was the only human who knew about it. Whatever he did next could determine whether humanity joined a galactic community or was destroyed as a threat. How long can you survive here without proper food? Jake asked. Not long. Perhaps a few of your days before I become too weak to maintain this form. And if you die here, what happens? Zara's eyes grew darker. My ship will automatically send a distress signal to my people. They will assume I was killed by your species and respond accordingly. Jake felt cold fear settle in his stomach. If Zara died, humanity would face the wrath of an advanced alien civilization. But keeping her alive meant helping her drain Earth's power grid, which would eventually draw attention they could not handle. He had wanted to make first contact with aliens his entire life. Now that it was happening, Jake realized he might have doomed his entire species. Over the next 3 days, Jake's life became a nightmare of secrecy and fear. He called in sick to work and spent all his time trying to help Zara survive while keeping her existence hidden from the world. It was not working very well, that the power outages were getting worse. Every time Zara tried to feed, entire neighborhoods in Cedar Falls lost electricity for hours. The local power company was baffled and angry. They sent repair crews out constantly, but the workers could not find anything wrong with the equipment. The failures seemed random and impossible to predict. Jake rigged up a direct power line from his house to the small backup generator in his garage. He hoped that giving Zara a steady source of electricity would stop her from accidentally draining the town's power grid. But the generator could only provide a tiny fraction of what she needed. It was like trying to feed a starving person with a few crumbs of bread. "I am sorry, Jake," Zara said on the third morning. She was sitting by his kitchen window, looking even paler than before. Her silver hair had lost its shine, and her eyes were dim. "I am trying to control my hunger, but it becomes more difficult each day." Jake poured himself a cup of coffee and sat down across from her. He had not slept more than 2 hours at a time since she arrived. Every time he dozed off, the lights in his house would flicker as Zara unconsciously absorbed power in her sleep. "Can you explain exactly what kind of energy you need?" Jake asked. "Maybe I can find a better way to help you." Zara thought for a moment, choosing her words carefully. "My people evolved near a young star that produced intense radiation. We learned to convert electromagnetic energy directly into the force that sustains our bodies. On our homeworld, we absorb power from solar flares, cosmic rays, and the magnetic fields of our planet. And on Earth, your star is older and calmer. Your magnetic field is weaker. The energy sources I need are scarce here, so I must take power from artificial sources. Your electrical systems contain the right type of energy, but in very small amounts." Jake rubbed his tired eyes. "What about other sources? Could you feed on radio waves, or microwave signals, or something like that?" "Those energies are too weak. I need concentrated power sources." Zara paused, looking uncomfortable. "There is one other option, but I do not wish to use it." "What option?" "Living beings generate bioelectric fields. The electrical activity in your brains and nervous systems contains energy that I could absorb. But doing so would harm or kill the person I fed on." Jake felt his blood turn cold. Zara was not just an energy vampire who drained machines. She could potentially feed on human beings directly. "Have you ever done that? Fed on living creatures?" "Not on intelligent beings," Zara said quickly. "My people consider that barbaric. But in the past, when we explored dead worlds, we sometimes had to consume the bioelectric energy of simple animals to survive." Before Jake could respond, his cell phone rang. The sound made both of them jump. Electronic devices had been working sporadically around Zara, turning on and off randomly as she unconsciously absorbed their power. The caller ID showed that it was Pete Wilson, Jake's supervisor at the observatory. Jake had been avoiding Pete's calls for 3 days, but he knew he could not hide forever. "Hi, Pete," Jake answered, trying to sound normal. "Jake, where the hell are you?" Pete's voice was angry and worried. "You missed 3 days of work without calling. And now there are federal agents crawling all over the observatory, asking questions about electromagnetic anomalies." Jake's heart sank. "Federal agents?" "Yeah, some woman from the Department of Energy wants to know why our telescope was broadcasting unauthorized signals at 3 in the morning last week. She also wants to know why every piece of electronic equipment in the building failed at exactly the same time." Across the table, Zara was listening to the phone conversation with growing alarm. Her eyes had turned a deeper shade of purple, which Jake had learned meant she was afraid. "I don't know anything about that," Jake lied. "Maybe it was a solar flare or something." Cut the crap, Jake. I know you've been sneaking back here at night. The security cameras caught you coming and going after hours. This agent, Crawford, I think her name was. She wants to talk to you immediately. Jake closed his eyes. Everything was falling apart. Okay, I'll come in tomorrow and explain everything. You'll come in today, right now. And Jake, whatever you've been doing with our equipment, you better have a good explanation. Because if the government shuts us down over this, I'll make sure you never work in astronomy again. Pete hung up before Jake could respond. Jake set down his phone and looked at Zara, who was now glowing faintly with nervous energy. They know about the signals, she said. Your government is investigating. What do we do? If they find you, they'll probably want to capture you for study. And if you try to escape, people might get hurt. Zara stood up and walked to the window. Outside, Jake could see black SUVs parked down the street. Men in dark suits were talking to his neighbors, asking questions. They are already here, Zara said quietly. Jake joined her at the window. There were at least 6 government vehicles surrounding his house. Agent Crawford, whoever she was, had moved fast. Can you make yourself invisible or something? Hide until they leave? I can manipulate light around my body to some degree, but not for long periods. And hiding will not solve the larger problem. What larger problem? Zara turned away from the window, and Jake saw real fear in her alien eyes. When my ship landed on your world, it sent out an automatic signal to my people. A beacon that tells them I have arrived safely and begun my investigation. That doesn't sound like a problem. The beacon updates regularly with information about my condition. If I become too weak, or if I am captured or killed, the signal will change. When that happens, other members of my species will come to investigate. Jake felt the world spinning around him. How many others? That depends on what the beacon tells them. If they believe I have been harmed, they will send a military force to determine what happened to me. The Kyrithi do not tolerate threats to their people. And if they think Earth is dangerous? Zara was quiet for a long moment. My people have encountered many species during our travels through the galaxy. Most of them no longer exist. Outside, Jake could see the government agents moving closer to his house. They had finished talking to the neighbors and were now setting up some kind of equipment in his yard. It looked like they were scanning for electromagnetic signatures. How long before your people notice something is wrong? Jake asked. The beacon transmits every few days. The next signal is due tomorrow morning. If I am too weak to respond properly, or if I have been captured, the message will automatically change to a distress call. Jake realized they were running out of time. In less than 24 hours, Earth might face invasion by an alien military force that could destroy human civilization. And it was all his fault for sending those stupid signals in the first place. Someone knocked loudly on Jake's front door. A woman's voice called out, "Mr. Morrison, this is Agent Lisa Crawford with the Department of Energy. We need to speak with you immediately about your activities at the Clearwater Observatory." Jake looked at Zara, who was now barely visible as she tried to bend light around her body. The effort was clearly draining what little energy she had left. "I have to answer the door," Jake whispered. "If I don't, they'll break it down." "Be careful what you tell them," Zara replied, her voice fading as she became more transparent. "The future of both our species may depend on what happens in the next few hours." Jake took a deep breath and walked to his front door. When he opened it, he saw a tall woman with short brown hair and intense green eyes. She was wearing a black suit and carrying a briefcase full of electronic equipment. "Mr. Morrison," Agent Crawford said, "I think it's time you and I had a very serious conversation about what you've been doing with government property." Behind her, Jake could see more agents surrounding his house. There was no escape, and no more time to figure out a plan. Whatever happened next would determine whether humanity survived its first contact with alien life. Agent Lisa Crawford stepped into Jake's living room and immediately stopped walking. Her eyes narrowed as she looked around the space. Something was wrong, but she could not figure out what it was. The temperature in here is at least 10 degrees. Colder than outside, she said, setting down her briefcase. And my electromagnetic field detector is going crazy. Jake tried to look confused. I don't know anything about that. Maybe the air conditioning is broken. Crawford pulled out a device that looked like a tablet computer covered in blinking lights. The screen showed waves of energy moving through Jake's house in patterns that made no sense. Mr. Morrison, this equipment is designed to detect unusual electromagnetic signatures. Right now, it's telling me that there's something in your house that doesn't belong on this planet. From the corner of his eye, Jake could see Zara hiding behind his bookshelf. She was almost completely invisible, but the effort was making her weaker. The lights in the room flickered as she unconsciously absorbed power. Those power fluctuations, Crawford continued. They've been happening all over town for the past 3 days. Always in a pattern that centers on this location. Want to explain that? Before Jake could answer, every electronic device in the house suddenly turned on at once. The television, the microwave, the radio, even Jake's old computer in the bedroom. They all activated simultaneously, creating a loud chaos of sound and light. Crawford drew her gun and spun around, looking for threats. What the hell is happening? Jake knew that Zara was losing control. Her hunger was so intense now that she could not stop herself from draining nearby electronics. In the corner, he could see her form becoming visible again as she grew too weak. To maintain her camouflage. Agent Crawford, Jake said quickly, I need to tell you something important, but you have to promise not to shoot first and ask questions later. Mr. Morrison, you are in serious trouble already. Start talking, and maybe I won't arrest you for treason. Jake took a deep breath. 3 nights ago, I made contact with Anne. Extraterrestrial being. She's here in my house right now, and she's dying. Crawford stared at Jake like he had lost his mind. Extraterrestrial being? Are you seriously trying to tell me you're hiding an alien? Her name is Zara. She came here because of the signals I was sending from the observatory. But Earth's environment is killing her, and if she dies, her people will think we murdered her. This is ridiculous, Crawford said, but her voice was uncertain. The electromagnetic readings on her device were getting stronger, and the electronic chaos in the house was getting worse. That was when Zara collapsed. She appeared suddenly as her invisibility failed completely, falling to her knees behind the bookshelf. Her pale skin was now almost gray, and her silver hair looked lifeless. When she tried to stand up, she stumbled and had to grab the wall for support. Crawford's gun was pointed at Zara before Jake could blink. Don't move. Keep your hands where I can see them. Please don't hurt her, Jake said, stepping between the gun and Zara. She's not dangerous. She's just trying to survive. Zara looked up at Crawford with eyes that were now completely silver. When she spoke, her voice was weak but still musical. Agent Crawford, I mean no harm to your species. I came here seeking knowledge, not conquest. Crawford kept her gun trained on Zara, but Jake could see doubt in her eyes. What are you? I am Kyrathi. My people are travelers who study other forms of intelligent life. Jake Morrison's transmissions reached our world and woke me from hibernation. I came to learn about humanity. The electromagnetic anomalies. That's you? Zara nodded slowly. I feed on energy patterns that are common in space, but rare on planetary surfaces. I have been trying to survive on your electrical systems, but they provide insufficient nourishment. Crawford lowered her gun slightly. How long have you been here? 3 of your days. But I will not last much longer without proper sustenance. Jake could see Crawford's mind working, trying to process what she was seeing. She was a government agent trained to handle unusual situations, but nothing had prepared her for this. Even if I believe you, Crawford said, this is way above my authority level. I need to contact my superiors immediately. You cannot, Zara said urgently. If your government captures me, my people will interpret it as an act of war. They will come to rescue me, and many humans will die in the process. How many of your people are we talking about? Zara was quiet for a moment. The Kyrathi Dominion has ships stationed throughout this region of the galaxy. If they believe I am in danger, they will send a battle fleet. Crawford holstered her weapon and pulled out a secure communication device. I have to report this. The president needs to know that we're facing potential alien invasion. Before she could make the call, every light in the neighborhood went out. Through the window, Jake could see that the power failure extended as far as he could see. Street lights, house lights, even the lights on Crawford's government vehicles outside had all died at the same time. That was not me, Zara said, looking confused and frightened. Crawford's communication device was also dead. She shook it and pushed buttons, but nothing happened. What's going on? Jake looked up at the sky and saw something that made his heart stop. 3 massive shapes were hanging in the air above Cedar Falls, blocking out the stars. They were enormous, each one at least a mile long, and they pulsed with the same pale blue light as Zara's ship. They are here, Zara whispered. The Dominion has arrived. The alien ships were unlike anything human technology could build. They looked like they were grown rather than constructed, with smooth curves and organic patterns. Dark energy flowed across their surfaces like lightning, and Jake could feel the power radiating from them even from miles away. Those are your people? Crawford asked. Yes, but not the ones I hoped would come. These ships belong to the military caste. They are led by Keth Morthic, a warrior who believes that lesser species should serve the Kyrathi or be destroyed. As if responding to his name, a new voice filled the air around them. It did not come from any speaker or device. A word seemed to form directly inside their minds, speaking in perfect English, but with an accent that was cold and cruel. Greetings, primitive beings of Earth. I am Keth Morthic of the Kyrathi Dominion. We have come seeking our scout, Zara Vexthani, who was sent to study your species. We detect that she is weak and possibly under threat. Crawford grabbed Jake's arm. Can they hear us? Not yet, Zara said. But they are scanning the planet for my bioelectric signature. They will find us soon. The alien voice continued. You have one of your hours to produce our scout unharmed and free. If you refuse, or if we determine that she has been mistreated, we will begin extracting the energy we need from your population centers. Jake felt sick. What does that mean? Extracting energy? Zara's expression was filled with horror. They will feed on the bioelectric fields of your people. Entire cities will be drained of life to sustain the Dominion fleet. Crawford was trying frantically to get her communication equipment working. I have to warn Washington. The military needs to know what we're facing. Your weapons will not work against them, Zara said. The Dominion ships can absorb and redirect energy. Attacking them will only make them stronger. One of the alien ships moved lower, hovering directly above Jake's house. The blue light it cast was so bright that it hurt to look at. The electromagnetic field was so strong that Jake could feel his hair standing on end. However, the voice of Keth Morthic said, now much louder, if your species proves useful, we may allow some of you to survive as servants. You will have the honor of providing sustenance for a superior race. Jake realized that humanity was facing its worst nightmare. An alien invasion by beings so advanced that Earth's military would be helpless against them. And it was all happening because of his mistake with the radio telescope. There has to be something we can do, Jake said desperately. Zara looked at him with sad, silver eyes. There is one possibility, but it would require me to sacrifice everything, and even then, the chances of success are very small. Crawford stopped trying to fix her equipment and looked at Zara. What kind of plan? The Kyrithi have one weakness that even the Dominion fears, but explaining it would take time we do not have, and implementing it would require the cooperation of your entire planet. Outside, Jake could hear the sounds of chaos beginning. Car alarms that still worked were going off randomly. In the distance, sirens wailed as emergency services tried to respond to the massive power failure. People were starting to panic as they realized that something impossible was happening in the sky above their town. Jake looked at Crawford, then at Zara, then up at the alien ships that were preparing to harvest humanity like crops. He had spent his whole life dreaming of making contact with aliens. Now that it had happened, he wished more than anything that he could take it all back. Zara struggled to her feet, using the wall for support. Her silver eyes were now glowing with desperate determination. The plan will require every radio telescope, particle accelerator, and communication array on your planet to work together. Can your government coordinate something like that in less than an hour? Crawford was still trying to process everything that had happened. Even if they could, most of our equipment is dead. Those ships are blocking all our communications. I can create a temporary shield around this location, Zara said. It will protect our electronics for a short time, but the effort will weaken me further. Jake watched as Zara raised her hands and concentrated. A faint bubble of energy formed around his house, and immediately his phone and computer started working again. Crawford's equipment also came back to life, beeping and flashing as it reconnected to government networks. "This is Agent Crawford," she said into her secure communicator. "Priority Alpha Emergency. I need to speak to the director immediately." While Crawford tried to explain the situation to her superiors, Jake turned to Zara. "What exactly is this plan? What weakness do the Kyrithi have?" Zara sat down heavily in Jake's chair. The energy shield was clearly draining her remaining strength. "My people are very old and very organized. For thousands of years, we have lived structured lives with predictable patterns. We feed in cycles, we think in ordered sequences, and we process information in logical progressions. That sounds like a strength, not a weakness. It is both. The Kyrithi mind cannot easily handle chaos or unpredictability. When we encounter truly random patterns, especially complex emotional or creative patterns, our neural systems become overloaded." Jake was starting to understand. "You want to broadcast something chaotic at them?" "Not just chaotic. Human consciousness creates a specific type of electromagnetic pattern that is unique in the galaxy. Your brains generate electrical activity that is both highly complex and completely unpredictable. Fear, love, creativity, hope, anger, dreams. All of these emotions create energy signatures that follow no logical pattern." Crawford finished her call and joined their conversation. "Washington is going insane trying to figure out what to do. The president is being moved to a secure bunker, and the military is preparing for an attack they can't possibly win. They need to coordinate a global broadcast instead," Zara said urgently. "Every communication device on Earth must transmit the same signal at the same time." "What signal?" Zara looked directly at Jake. "Human neural patterns. The electromagnetic signature of human consciousness, amplified and broadcast at a frequency that will overwhelm Kyrithi sensory systems." Crawford shook her head. "How do we capture something like that? Brain patterns aren't radio signals." "They are, actually. Jake said, his mind racing. Human brains generate electrical activity that can be measured and recorded. If we could amplify those patterns and broadcast them through every radio telescope and communication array on Earth, it would create the largest directed energy broadcast in human history, Zara finished. The chaotic beauty of human thought transmitted at a power level that would reach the Dominion ships. Outside, they could hear the alien voice of Keth, Morphic growing impatient. You have 30 of your minutes remaining. Produce our scout, or we will begin harvesting your population centers. Crawford was already on her communicator again, trying to explain the plan to officials who thought she had lost her mind. Sir, I know it sounds impossible, but we're dealing with aliens who feed on energy. The only way to stop them is to overwhelm their systems with human brain patterns. Jake was working frantically on his computer, calculating the technical requirements. We'll need at least 50 major radio telescopes working together, plus every satellite communication system, every cell tower, every broadcast station on the planet. Can it be done? Zara asked weakly. Maybe. The technology exists, but coordinating it globally in 30 minutes? That's the impossible part. Crawford's phone rang. It was the President of the United States, calling on a secure line that Jake never imagined would be used to call his house. Agent Crawford, this is President Martinez. I'm told you have a plan to stop these aliens. Crawford put the call on speaker. Yes, Mr. President, but it requires international cooperation on a scale we've never attempted before. For the next 20 minutes, Jake found himself explaining electromagnetic theory and alien psychology to world leaders who were calling from emergency bunkers around the globe. The President patched in the Prime Minister of England, the Chancellor of Germany, the President of China, and a dozen other heads of state. The concept is simple, Jake explained to the international conference call. We broadcast human brain patterns at maximum power through every communication device on Earth. The aliens can't process that much chaotic information at once. And if it doesn't work, ask the Chinese president. Zara leaned toward the phone. Then my people will drain the life force from your major cities until they have enough energy to continue their expansion across the galaxy. That motivated quick action. While Jake provided technical specifications, governments around the world began the impossible task of coordinating every radio telescope, satellite dish, cell tower, and broadcast station on the planet. The Arecibo Observatory in Puerto Rico was the first to confirm they were ready, then the Very Large Array in New Mexico. Within minutes, radio telescopes from Australia to Chile were reporting that they had synchronized their systems and were ready to broadcast. We need human neural patterns to transmit, Jake said. Volunteers who can wear EEG sensors while the broadcast happens. I'll do it, Crawford said immediately. So will I, Jake added. All around the world, people were volunteering to have their brain patterns recorded and amplified. Scientists, soldiers, artists, children, grandparents, thousands of people connected themselves to EEG machines so that their thoughts and emotions could be broadcast to the stars. 5 minutes remaining, announced the voice of Keth Morphic. We are beginning preliminary energy extraction from your largest population center. On the news feeds that Crawford's phone was receiving, they could see one of the alien ships moving over New York City. Street lights were going out in expanding circles as the ship began to drain the city's power grid. We're ready, announced the director of the global broadcast network that had been assembled in record time. All stations are synchronized and awaiting the signal. Jake looked at Zara, who was now barely conscious. Will you be okay when this happens? I do not know, she admitted. Human neural patterns affect my people strongly. The broadcast might put me into hibernation, or it might destroy me completely. And if it works on the Dominion ships, if it works, Keth Morthek and his warriors will be forced into emergency hibernation. Their ships will retreat to the edge of your solar system and wait for new orders from our homeworld. Crawford was monitoring reports from around the globe. All stations report ready. Jake, it's time. Jake put on the EE headset that would record his brain patterns. Around the world, thousands of other volunteers were doing the same thing. He thought about his childhood dreams of meeting aliens, about his hope that humanity would someday join a galactic community, about his fear that his mistake had doomed his entire species. Broadcasting now, announced the network coordinator. Every radio telescope on Earth turned toward the alien ships and began transmitting the electromagnetic patterns of human consciousness. The signal contained the thoughts and emotions of people from every country, every culture, every walk of life. Fear and hope, love and anger, creativity and logic, dreams and nightmares, all of it broadcast at a power level that had never been attempted before. The effect on the Kyrithi ships was immediate and dramatic. The blue energy that flowed across their surfaces began to flicker and pulse erratically. The voice of Keth Morthek, which had been coldly threatening, suddenly became confused and distorted. What ... What is this chaos ... cannot process. 2. Much randomness. Zara collapsed completely as the human neural patterns overwhelmed her alien nervous system. But she was smiling as she lost consciousness. The 3 massive ships began to retreat from Earth's atmosphere, their organized formations, breaking apart as their crews struggled to handle the chaotic beauty of human thought. Within minutes, they had disappeared into the darkness of space, leaving behind only the memory of humanity's first contact with alien life. Jake removed his EA headset and knelt beside Zara. She was alive but unconscious, her alien physiology, forever changed by exposure to human neural patterns. When she finally woke up 3 days later, Zara's silver eyes now contained flecks of brown and green, human colors. The broadcast had changed her at a fundamental level, making her a bridge between 2 very different species. Did it work? She asked weakly. Jake smiled and helped her sit up. It worked. Your people have retreated, and Earth is safe. But more importantly, I think we've started something new. A friendship between humans and Kyrithi that's based on understanding instead of fear. 6 months later, Jake Morrison was no longer a lonely radio astronomer making unauthorized transmissions.